Fox Carolina is committed to you, and we are diving into the criminal history of Cassius Broadwater. The man Greenwood police say shot and killed the mother of his child and her best friend, all while he was already out on bond. Now, viewers reached out to us up in arms after his double murder arrest, outraged that he was even able to get out and walk around.
So we obtained his warrants, his SLED report, and bond order, and tonight Fox Carolina's Margaret-Ann Carter is digging into this case. She went to Greenwood to sit down with the solicitor and a member of the police department to get some answers.
In this hand right here, I had the SLED report for 21-year-old Cassius Broadwater, dating back to when he was just 17 and charged with second-degree assault and battery. Now, from there, he accumulated 13 more charges, including the 2 murder charges for Ariel Beeks and Kendall Curry back on June 28th. Now, in looking through all of this, it's very hard to imagine how someone with such an extensive background was released on a $70,000 bail. But what I learned in speaking with Solicitor David Stumbo and Sergeant Jonathan Link is that this is part of a much bigger issue plaguing our justice system, and the pandemic only brought about more challenges. Cassius Broadwater's criminal history is littered with felonies, gun charges, and drug offenses, several crimes in which he was convicted and served time for, but many would argue not enough time. In documents we obtained from Greenwood police that shows they issued a warrant for attempted murder in March of 2020 after they say Broadwater shot into an occupied vehicle. 2 months later, a judge released him on a $70,000 bond after it was determined Broadwater's attempted murder charge was in fact an overcharge, saying no person was identified as being the target of the shot. Now, I asked Solicitor David Stumbo about this, but he was unable to comment, saying it's a pending case. However, he did tell me the law defines attempted murder as having specific intent, and many times when a gun is fired and no one is hurt, those charges are downgraded to breach of peace, a crime much easier to prove in court.
When someone's charged with a crime, law enforcement does as good of a job as they can do to investigate it and charge it. But we have to have the elements to prove it at trial for any given charge. And sometimes you have to downgrade the charge because of what evidence is there. I mean, we have to obviously play the hand we're dealt.
Even with that lesser charge, Stumbo says that he recommended Broadwater be denied bond, but the final decision is left up to a judge who Stumbo believes was forced to make a tough call.
During the pandemic, there was a lot of factors that the judges were having to look at. I think they were under pressure to grant a lot of bonds so the jails wouldn't fill up and have COVID outbreaks. Which is unfortunate. It's
an outcome that no one could predict, but one that would prove to be fatal for 2 young women.
It's never an easy conversation to have. Trying to explain to a grieving family that there's a backed up court system, that this person had rights to, even though they just killed your loved one. It's not an easy thing to do.
I sat down with Greenwood Police Sergeant Jonathan Link, who explained to me the vicious cycle where officers arrest a suspect only to have them released back into society.
I think from law enforcement's perspective, we might say that one time is too many, just because there's a chance of reoffending and somebody else, an escalation of it, getting hurt and things like that. So, obviously there's a certain element of us that would like to see the offenders that we lock up kept in until their case is processed. The reality of it is that that's not feasible in many situations.
In the judge's bond order Fox Carolina obtained, it mentions the court is, quote, extremely concerned with the fact that a firearm was discharged and, quote, very concerned about the gang affiliation allegation. However, in the very next sentence, it reads, nonetheless, and due to the admitted attempted murder overcharge, the court determines that bond is appropriate and that conditions may be imposed to protect the community. Now, we've laid out the conditions stating Broadwater would remain under house arrest, have no contact with the co-defendants, and cannot possess a firearm. His mother signed the bond order agreeing to report any violations. And tomorrow, I'll be going deeper into the challenges the pandemic has thrust on our judicial system, causing a backlog, thousands of cases deep. You don't want to miss that report tomorrow night on Fox Carolina.